Ellen Fullman's work resides between the fields of sound art and music. Since 1981, Fullman has developed a long string instrument, an installation of dozens of wires, 50 feet or more in length. In our case, it's about 71 feet. Tuned in just intonation and bowed with rosin-coated fingers, producing a chorus of minimal organ-like overtones. The instrument combines Fullman's artistic expressions of everyday activities, such as walking, with a unique performance art sensibility. Please join me in welcoming Ellen Fullman.
I'd like to begin this evening with a demo because, might as well since it's here and you can experience, everything firsthand, and then we can get into a discussion about how I got to this point and what my, artistic interests are. nothing like firsthand experience, you know. So I wanted you to have that before we started to talk about my ideas and how I came to this point. One thing I wanted to describe to you as far as what happened there, if you noticed, my right hand position remained the same the entire time. And there's a curious thing about how this works, just, you know, literally through, you know, walking and walking, year after year, day after day, hour after hour. I started to notice that I could change the overtone spectrum of an existing chord by choosing different tones to play with it. And if you, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but it occurred there that I changed, you know, to another note there about halfway down, and I lifted off, and it was as if there was a different chord being played. You heard like so many different transformations along the way. So it's a mysterious, you know, wonderful thing to play with, around with the what this instrument does with extended, very strong high partials. That's the harmonic upper partial tones. That's the material that I work with and what intrigues me about this particular thing. And so it's a very technical thing, but I hope you heard what I'm talking about. Well, I'll go back to that and point out some things, but I'm going to go way back to the beginning. When I first started playing with materials as a sculptor, I went to the Kansas City Art Institute. In my final year, I became interested in sound. I became aware of the work of Harry Partch, who was one of the great American experimentalists who was born at the turn of the century and whose work reached a zenith, you say, in the early 60s. California-based, and he invented, well, he studied, you know, ancient Greek music theory, and was a revivalist of the tuning systems that they invented, I would say, like in Greece and China simultaneously, what we refer to as Pythagorean tuning. And he took that further, and I'll go into that, but it gets kind of technical, just that it's all based on mathematical intervals. But anyway, so I first became aware of his work, and that made me interested in sound. Well, I was interested before, but that becoming aware of his work gave me the impetus to pursue making my own instruments, and this was my first instrument was the metal skirt sound sculpture. Also, at this time, I was, and still am, really fascinated by the Judson Church group in New York, the artists in the mid-'60s who were creating dance performance works, Yvonne Rainer, Tricia Brown, and a large influence on me, Deborah Hay. These artists were incorporating everyday movement into their work, and I liked the idea of that. With this piece, I really liked the idea that all I had to do was walk, and I could create a spectacle of myself, and as well as create a very odd sound. What I had were guitar strings, kind of, elastic nylon core strings to the toes and heels of my platform shoes, and I put, I built big bridges on the front and back of the shoes. This was 1980, and the disco era had just coming to a demise, and there were lots of platform shoes in Goodwill. I put these strings to the toes and heels of my shoes, and I felt kind of like puppet-like with the strings. And what happened was when I stretched one leg forward, the back string stretched out and produced a rising gliss, while the front string squeezed in and produced a descending gliss. So simultaneously there was rising and falling pitches as well as a lot of metal creaking. I put a contact microphone on the skirt and carried a pig nose amp over my shoulder. And this is a videotape from that time of me walking down the street on Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis, where I lived. This was the area where the prostitutes work, and hence I named this piece Streetwalker. Tried to maintain the fourth wall there, but I didn't succeed. So at that time, I just like intuitively worked with materials and just wanted to play with things. And this was in my loft studio. I made this pedal that I could jump up and down on and shake a lot of metal litho plates. So that's how the I strung up one string. I put 10 coffee cans on either side of it and created like a child's walkie-talkie telephone. I sang into it, recorded at the other end. It was like a kind of a analog filter for my voice. I bowed the string. And then one day I brushed it past this string where the rosin had been deposited by the bow, and it produced this whole other kind of sound, and I just started to explore that. I then attached that string to a very large mixing bowl, put some water in it, put the contact pickup on the bowl, modulated the sound of the resonance of the bowl by kind of playing that string and resonating the bowl. But I was very confused because I was not able to tune the string. And no matter what I did, tensioning it didn't change the pitch. So it was just a very mysterious thing until I met up with Bob Bilecki, who's an engineer. He's teaching at Bard now in the MFA program, and but he's who's a very creative engineer who has influenced a lot of composers' work. Lamont Young, Laurie Anderson. He invented Laurie Anderson's tape bow violin, among many other things that she has worked with. And I was able to have a meeting with him, and he explained this to me. He brought the handbook of physics. He brought a spool of brass wire. He brought a vice grip. And so he told me that this string was vibrating in the longitudinal mode. The wave is moving back and forth along the length. Because I'm rubbing it along the length, I'm exciting that mode in the string, as opposed to the transverse mode, which is like an up and down wave, which is created when you pluck or bow across. And so he clamped the vice grip on the wire, and that produced a higher pitch. Then we attached a brass wire and stretched it, and then that as well produced a lower frequency. So the only way to tune wires that are vibrating in the longitudinal mode is by changing the length or by changing the material of the wire. The first installation I did after that meeting with him was at the Terminal New York show in Brooklyn in 1983. This was a show organized by the first wave of Williamsburg artists. There were 600 artists in the show. It was in what was the U.S. Postal, it was like an army terminal, but taken over by the post office. It had a railroad track running through it. It was like a mile-long concrete building, and I just set up my studio there. I brought a bunch of wood. I built a wooden box resonator. I decided I was interested in acoustic sound. And so this was my first tuned instrument. And this videotape represents the first time that I explored this installation. I can see that it was kind of a theremin-like experience of just touching and having these like beautiful kind of like chamber, like it's like a string quartet almost. Just it's very intuitive and just touching and so I was just very excited about the potential there, but I needed to teach myself some basic principles about music, like about tuning and harmony and musical structure. I have a bunch of technical slides here. I think I might be best to kind of zoom through this and not worry too much whether we, really, get every detail here. But this is my world. This is, I work with ratio-based tuning. That's a diagram there that shows, say, two strings of equal length. That E string has a clamp or a capo placed on it 2/3 of the way down. In that case, if the string length is at the pitch A and you clamped a capo 2/3 of the way, you would get the pitch E. And that's, in musical terms, that's the most harmonic relationship after the octave, which is, it's called the perfect fifth in, Western classical theory. But actually that relationship is the number 3. And in just intonation, it's referred to as the 3/2. And there it is again, just showing the math of how ratios are calculated. And then this is a tool that I use. It's called the tuning lattice. This is like a universal kind of tool. It's not something that I invented. It's something that helps me navigate through pitch relationships. If you calculate, as I do, the tuning system based on A and call that A your 1/1, that would be your root, and then the 3/2, then the perfect fifth. If you diagram those as along a horizontal axis, and then the next most harmonic relationship is if you divided, say, that string up into 5 parts, then 4/5 of that length equals the major third. And I've diagrammed that on the diagonal. And this lattice can just go on and on. It's building relationships of relationships. You keep going. And this is how just intonation works. It's all mathematical, mathematically based, and it's a network of an interval of an interval of an interval, pure intervals. But in that case, when you work with these pure intervals, as opposed to equal temperament, which is what all of our Western classical music is tuned to, where there are 12 equally placed notes in an octave. In this case, it's your choice how many notes you want in an octave, and you run into issues where you might have several versions of a tone. Like, for example, you see the G 9/5 up in the right corner is plus 17.6 cents. Cents is like a unit of measurement between, there are 100 cents between each half step. The 16/9 G is minus 3.9 cents. So those two Gs are slightly out of tune with each other. And so you run into issues of, having a whole lot of notes in a scale, or, just deciding, like where to limit your musical material. I kind of meander through these ratios and just explore different areas at different times, different intervals, different combinations of intervals. And this is a mapping of Harry Partch's 43-tone scale. He defined his scale and didn't deviate. He stayed within this, which has a beautiful symmetry and lots of different possibilities. This is William Matthews' diagram interpreting that lattice for musicians who are used to staff notation. So he's turned it on its side, and so that makes those kind of relationships more clear for people with standard training. This is a spread out of a book published at the turn of the century by John Tyndall. It's called Sound, and this is an experiment where he shows these principles of the longitudinal mode and how the string vibrates when excited in the longitudinal mode. So the this principle was well known in musical acoustics, but to my knowledge was never used for a musical instrument. And Bob told me that the speed of the wave divided by the length will give the frequency. So I plugged that formula into an Excel spreadsheet. And if you see that, like in those colored areas, you've got brass, bronze, stainless steel up at the top, and then those are different lengths in metric units. So what I do is I just stretch out a tape measure, and then I place these capos, basically at these locations, but then I use an electronic tuner to fine tune it. This is my first score. I wanted to find a way to define time and compose music for this instrument, which is, where time is really all about walking, about how far the performer, the distance of each, how long a tone is sustained, the duration. Standard notation just seemed to make no sense for this, and this instrument wants to have tones that extend for a long duration because of the changes which take place, as the performer moves. That's the beauty, I feel of this, and the interesting part to explore. So anyway, this was in 1984. I thought, well, how can two people this is a duet, how can two people keep track of each other? The only way I could think of, first thought was in unison. The two walked together. So we walked to the bridge at the resonator and walked out together and played this sequence of chords. And this piece was a duet composed for myself with composer Arnold Dreiblatt. Arnold has been a big influence on my work. I really I'm very interested in his music. Then I thought, well, what's the next most complex way that two people could still track each other? And I thought of this where one person is walking out while the other one is walking in. And what was nice about this was that each performer could kind of cover over the blank space where the performer changed to a new chord. When the other performer could continue sustaining, and then they crossed over each other in kind of like a scissor-like motion. But I didn't want to stop with that. I wanted to be able to track multiple performers in a more complex way. I saw this fabric, this Guatemalan fabric, just somehow, read as music to me. The geometric patterns just inspired me, and I came up with this system where I placed colored lines on the floor, and these lines were at proportionate intervals to each other, and that way the performers were able to track more complex changes. I have a video of that piece. So that was a real landmark for me, and I'm still very excited about working with multiple people, moving in that way. That piece I distilled to a duet with Danielle Massey, one of the performers in the video, and we were performing in Seattle at Soundworks Northwest. And after the show, we were in a warehouse space for the Frick Art Museum downtown Seattle, and we recorded after the concert. And something happened that changed things for me, or really added something. And what happened was a train came by, and the sound of the train, I'll let you hear it. The sound of that train, I wanted to incorporate that kind of a sound into my music, and I just thought that that moment when that train came by was more beautiful than the piece that I had composed. It's just the combination was beautiful. And what I wanted to do was to be able to compose works that also produced that kind of sound. And what I realized is that I needed to expand. Well, let me just say that this project has been my own personal music school, and I started with the most simple intervals and incorporated those, or internalized, those relationships. And over time, what I've been doing is expanding outward toward more dissonant or more complex intervals, and that's what the train did. It was there was more complexity in that sound, and what you might call dissonance, but like I feel a beautiful expressivity in that. And so I wanted to. I didn't know. I didn't. It took me a long time. I just kind of tried different things, and to get that going. Well, I think what I want to do is just play one more track. This is when I started to feel like I was getting something there with that. This piece I titled it Train because the relationship to that other moment. This was recorded in Berlin. I was there on a DAAD fellowship for a year in 2001. And it was there that I started exploring more extended intervals. So there's, I think every artist has like a lot of like different areas of interest. That's one area. And then this graph here describes what I was talking about earlier, which had to do with those extended partials and the kind of things that can happen when that's there. This is a comparison between my instrument and a cello, both playing A. And you can see down in the lower range, the cello is blue, the long string instrument is yellow. And there's a lot of overlap down in the low frequencies. But as you move up in the higher range, in the middle there, you see that the partials on the long string instrument remain very, very strong and continue up beyond the so-called range of hearing, which is supposed to be 20K. But these partials are very strong up in the like 30, 40K. So I suspect that there are things going on with like super, like high frequencies that maybe we can't really even hear, and then things going on with when chords are played and every string has like a spectrum like so intense that these upper frequencies are batted around and influenced by each other because there's just so much going on up there. And that's what I play with. And I like to try, and have succeeded sometimes. I like to try to map out these changes, which, to locate something and be able to pull it back again through composition. So this is just a graphic to describe like all these the spectrum changes along the length. This kind of spiky elongated thing represents like the harmonics along a string length. Just some of the harmonics, you know. It's just as a way for me to visualize that. And my strings are all different lengths. They stop at these clamps. And this chart shows the resonator on the left, and this is an example of a chord tuned to these first few harmonics. It's a very harmonic overtone series based chord. And then I stretched the graphic out to different lengths. You'll notice the circled numbers on the floor are represented there along the top axis. And then you see that the patterning lines up for some of those points. And that's when I hear what I call events or artifacts. You hear like these changes which occur along the length of the string, the spectral changes. This is a diagram which is based on this elastic band that I have hanging on the installation here. I have these colors they're banded at different, say, intervals. They're like dividing this length up into the first few overtones. You divided the elastic into 3, into 5, 7, and 9, and then each one is a color. So the roots the root is pink. The root is like the octave and fundamental. And I have here these paper. I can stretch this. It's just a last band, and it's colored here. This rainbow area here is the halfway point. And this, so I've been kind of visualizing what's going on here by hanging these, you know, and then as I play, and it's, oh, okay, I passed that across the, you know, the 9, you know, or passed across the 3, the 5, and you really hear a lot here with the halfway point because it's kind of like it all comes together. But I've got this set up for this string, this D, and if you can listen to what happens when I reach that the halfway point is right here. That's this A string. So it cancels out, kind of goes silent there. But when I play the 2 strings together, this is the 9 and the 3, which lines up because this is a perfect fifth relationship between this A is the A above D. And when the strings are tuned like in these proportionate ways, you know, these events are going to line up with each other. If it's the string is made out of the same material, which these are both stainless steel. So let's listen to what happens when. Changes in the sound along the way, and it has to do with my hand passing across these note points. So the string is, I think it's dampened, you know, where it's, you know, being played, and there's a wave that's moving And this is my most precise notation to date. It's a solo piece, and I use the circular the numbers with circles on the floor to mark, locations where to be walking to, and I designed graphic icons to remind myself of different gestural articulations. And so it's really like a road map telling me where to go. And I have some video of that piece. And for this piece, I mounted spy cams on my wrists, which show what I would call micro articulations of my fingertips, which changed the sound being produced. And my idea was to share with the audience who, like at a distance or whatever, you would just see hands, kind of not doing very much. But then I thought, well, I'll bring the audience into like little things that I'm doing with my fingers. What I ended up with looks a little bit like dancing spiders, because I projected these very large in a performance at the Berkeley Art Museum, and there's the two images side by side, and it's just static, like two hands, because the relationship between the camera and the hands is static, and then you see the floor sweeping by. finally, I have a folk music bent, and I always wanted to find a way to play my instrument rhythmically without feeling embarrassed about having this gigantic thing and playing something that might could easily be played on better on a cello or violin or something. So I've worked through the years with working with different tools, just pieces of wood, and exploring things, but nothing seemed to work quite to my satisfaction. And I did touch strings with my palms of my hand with a rocking motion, and I came up with the idea of making something to hold, kind of like an iron, that is with a curve that's kind of based on the curve of the palm of the hand. And I made a model of this when I was in Berlin, and fortunately I had an instrument builder friend there, Stefan Beck, and he made these for me. They're hollow wooden boxes. The wood is a nice resonant wood like California redwood or something, and I applied rosin to the box. And I'm going to zoom on. These are some graphics that I use to describe different articulations, and it's really a lot like conga drum playing. It's like slapping and motions like that. There's it's possible to dampen and to play an open tone. And so I came up with this notation and put it in a grid, decided to make a piece in 4/4 time. I invited a couple of graduate students from Mills College to play with me, and at first I thought, oh, these people, they can do anything. I'm going to write something really complex rhythmically, and then I thought, well, hey, it'll be a new musical instrument for them, and new tool to be working with. I'm just going to make the piece in 4/4 time, and that turns out to be hard enough. And that's how I composed the interlocking parts. Is I created loops and then slid them and found found things that interested me. This is a performance from the Seaholm Power Plant with Travis Weller and Nick Kinney's playing the box bows. And I've got a little audio clip from that.
Do you ever put resonators on both sides?
I've tried that. The question was, do I put resonators on both sides? I mean, it's an interesting thought because it's true, there is sound on the other side. I can resonate these wooden blocks here at the end, and the tuning is something that makes some sense. So if that were a resonator, it would amplify it more. It gets into, like a hard, construction-wise, it's kind of hard to, how do you terminate the string inside another resonator? Because the string is terminated with like just a dowel and a loop, and then here I've got a crank and I'm tensioning it. Tension has no bearing in the longitudinal mode as far as like changing the pitch. It's just that I crank up the tension to the breaking point to increase resonance. So it's kind of, I thought about it, but it just seemed impractical. And I can get sound out of those blocks, which I do sometimes. Does anyone have something else?
I have a question. What kind of wire are you using?
Well, this wire, I am able to custom order it and have it drawn from rods from a company in Connecticut. And the wire, it's tempered, spring tempered wire. And most of it is stainless steel. I came across stainless steel. I was on a residency at the Exportorium, and they just ordered a bunch of different materials for me, and I liked the sound of it. But I also like it because it's 9/1000ths. It's like super fine. 9/1000ths can be compared to what's called a slinky E string for electric guitar. It's very flexible, the highest string on the guitar. But I like stainless because it's strong, and I mean, it's like really fragile, at this length and everything, and so I like the fineness of it because when I'm playing it, you hear less friction and more tone. And then I also have some bronze wire, and bronze will put out a low frequency for a given length. And I use bronze just to get lower.
Are they all the same gauge then?
Well, it's gauge also doesn't have influence the tuning whatsoever. I just experimented to find the finest gauge that was practical without breaking too easily. The bronze, I settled on 13/1000ths. It's a little thicker because it's more fragile than
The tensile
stainless.
strength on it, is there
What's that?
the breaking strength or the breaking strength?
What's the breaking point?
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be good to
But
find
someone,
out.
you have it all custom made.
I have it, I just have it drawn into a particular temper, They have medium temper, soft temper, hard temper. The hard temper is kind of too brittle. It's it's the same stuff as you would get from a musical instrument company, piano wire, or whatever. It's just that it can be used industrially, the exact same kind of wire. Yes?
What's your process for scoring? I mean, do you sort of improvise first and then go back and...
That's what I do. Yeah, I just use my ear. I look for things that I like. I just play, and then I make a note of it. I don't work the other way around of marking out, this nodal point is going to be here, and then it'll line up with this other thing. I've tried to do that, but it really works for me, just what I hear.
It seems like you're using your body too. I mean, that seems that you are using your body as a memory device too.
Exactly. I internalize, I have internalized something about the spectrum, and so I know, I'm coming up to this, I'm going to play it a little softer because I like to emphasize what happens here, and it's just kind of, and every movement of the body is reflected in the sound. So if there were any jerk at all, you could hear that, and I do jerk on purpose sometimes to kind of emphasize like a dynamic, change. But I've learned how to walk very smoothly. I realize that I kind of look like I'm on a conveyor belt. So that just happened through just doing it.
this a typical length? Have you done
This is,
longer?
I love this length. This is, I've done this several times. This is 70 feet or so. It's cello range. I don't quite get all the way down to the low C string on a cello. But I like this range, and if I have a longer length, then I would put another person playing it as like a bass part. Yes.
Were you a musician before you started experimenting with sound?
No, so the question was I a musician? And no, I was a visual artist. I studied sculpture, and so I really don't know a lot about standard music theory. I've taken my own route, and I work with like this just intonation tuning system, which really doesn't abide by the same rules as the standard music theory. One builds different kinds of chords, or it's possible to, and so you really the same rules don't apply anyway. So.
Are your notated pieces
Yeah.
specific to particular bills of your instrument?
Well, that's a good question. Like it is in a way specific, because that piece, the reverse piece on black, that piece with the hands, that was composed in my studio, which is shorter than this, and so in a way it's like a higher frequency, higher range piece. So even if I was in a long space, I tuned some strings to that same length, because then I would run across these kind of sounds at that same place, what I was expecting. So it is mind-boggling really to like reproduce things, or some, it's kind of a fun problem. Yes.
Do you, as the pitch, like the fundamental pitch based on the bill of the instrument, or are you always sticking to a certain fundamental?
I just stick with the same, tuning system, and then if a room is longer, then that allows me to, bump some strings like down an octave. I would double up those lengths. I like getting as low as possible, getting like a more lower end. And so it's kind of arbitrary whether if I'm going to, put something in a lower octave. In a way, I sort of think it doesn't matter, because the spectrum, like there's so many high overtones. It's like a kind of as far as voicing goes, what's called voicing, whether you play notes in a chord in one octave or another, like that's very important in most instruments. But in this, it's like all the overtones are just shimmering around, and I can bump things up and down an octave depending on how softly or hard I touch the string. And I don't know.
Have you tried putting like washers or bells or anything on the strings?
Washers?
Yeah.
How would you think of doing that?
Well, I guess you'd have to put the wire through the washer, unless you had the split wires.
What sound would you
I was
think?
wondering if it was like altered prepared piano, where you get different sounds.
Like
from
a
the sound.
rattling kind of?
Yeah, rattling with the bells, maybe with the bells ring with the.
Mhm. Yeah, I would do that.
Okay.
Can you repeat that so that we can all hear what you asked?
Oh, yeah. What he asked was, what if you thread a washer through the string through a washer, and to get like kind of a prepared sound, like kind of like a rattling of the washer, or a bell. And I said that I haven't tried that. Yes.
How does flooring or ceiling adjust the performance? I mean, if this were
Yep.
wood, it would sound different.
Totally different. Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Every room is so different. It's a matter of kind of, I like to settle in for a few days. It's great here that I get to have these few days to just settle in and try to make the most of every situation, play the room. It's just, I've been able to experience so many different rooms, I mean, that's one thing that's been super great about doing something so enormous, is that I have to use large rooms, and, you know, so.
Quick question.
Yes.
One of the first pieces you did, it was outdoors. Have you tried doing this outdoors since then, or?
Okay, so the question is about doing it outdoors. What piece are you referring to? The one in Seattle?
The furthest one in New York, I think.
No, that wasn't outdoors. It was a building that was like
Oh.
a mile long. It was.
looked like
it was an atrium space.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it wasn't outdoors. I did one installation outdoors in Seattle, and it was interesting. Very interesting. It was on a hillside in Magnuson Park. I have a slide of it. It was my only outdoor installation that was successful. And the only reason why it was successful was because, I left that slide out anyway, but the only reason why it was successful was because the sound engineer was really, really great, and he put an array of Meyer sound loudspeakers around, and that Meyer's, they're just great loudspeakers, and he kind of made the audience feel like they were in an enclosure, I really need resonance of a room in order to get these things to happen. Outdoors, it just dies away, so.
Well, does a stone church?
Stone churches are like the primo favorite place for me, yeah. And what were you gonna say?
Is this the longest one that you worked with, or?
It's
is it
not.
longer?
I worked longer. The longest was in Fort Worth. It was on it's like in a barn, like it was a metal building. It's called the Poultry Barn. It was on the fairgrounds, and 300 feet long. I put 300 feet long. I put one string, and I just attached. It was like a corrugated metal building. I just attached one string to the corrugate, and it had more of a throbbing sound, more of a texture, or rather than tonal, more like, I don't know. I couldn't really describe it as a tone. But it was fun, and I did another part that was shorter, where more like this in that space. So, is that everything? Thank you so much.